because I have a great list of questions too. And then I'm going to try and get through mine, and I will then try to work everybody's questions in, especially if they're related to the questions that we're already asking. So I do request that everybody besides our panelists put themselves on mute. If you have any questions, once again, please put them up in the chat function. I will be monitoring the chat function. So let's go ahead and get started. Michael is already rolling and recording. I am Sarah Touchstone. I'm with Landmark Title. This is our third in our series of essentials. So we've done a panel on realtors are essential. We've done a panel on lenders are essential. And today we get to touch on inspectors and appraisers are essential. So you guys you're the next step. You're the gatekeepers for so many of our real estate agents. And there's so much, I won't say controversy, but there's a lot of chatter out there right now about how inspections are being done, how appraisals are being done. And people want to know if our current market conditions are affecting what we are doing. So this is a Landmark Title event. This is put on by all of our amazing reps that are on here. So if your rep did invite you today, please reach out to them for more classes, more content, more of what you would like to see Landmark Title putting on. So we've got some amazing, amazing reps. I'm going to maybe let them give a shout out at the end. So we're going to go ahead. I would like to introduce our panelists. And if you guys could say just a little bit about you and your business so that as we go into this, we are familiar. Mary Ann, I'd like to start out with you. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. I appreciate it. My name is Mary Ann Chiquete. I live in Buckeye, Arizona. My company, Benchmark Home Inspection. I've been in business here in Arizona as a home inspector for going on 11 years. 11 years ago when I started, I got a lot of crazy looks, as a woman home inspector. Not a whole lot of women, apparently, in the inspection industry at that time. I'm seeing more women now, which I'm happy to see. I think it's a great trade for women, men. It's something that's so important, as far as educating buyers on purchasing homes. So I basically I used to serve the entire Metro Phoenix area. Now I've kind of shrunk down my service area to more of Central Phoenix and then West, the West side. I do still go up to North Phoenix, but I've kind of shrunk down my service area a little bit. And so I do a lot of home inspections on the West side.
West side, best side. Anthony with HCP. Thank you for being on, Mr. Lorax.
Well, thanks for having me. Yeah, my name is Anthony. I'm with HCP Property Inspections. We've been in business for about 6 years now. I've owned the company. Started it with my brother. We now have 10 inspectors across the valley. We service the entire valley in Tucson as well. We really got into it because of a bad experience, right? We purchased a home, didn't have the greatest experience with the results and things like that, and kind of started looking into it and figuring out, what we could do and how we could provide a better service or better value to our to the buyers. And that's really what we focus on is the experience. And, my team says all the time, it's not so much what you find, but kind of how you describe what you find and making sure the customer's, truly informed. And so that's really what we focus on. But yeah, thanks for having me.
Yeah, it's our pleasure. And then Jay.
So first, Anthony is also a very good indoor soccer player. Just for those who did not know that, there's more to Anthony than just being a good home inspector. So I'm Jay Josephs. I've been appraising about 30 years, run a company called Josephs Appraisal Group. About 10 years ago, we also started a company called Value Trend Solutions, which has since evolved and is part of the Apex family. I think last month we did like 10,000 appraisals nationwide. We do a lot of outreach. We have a real estate school, and it's a pleasure to be here. Happy to be involved.
Jay, did anybody else get kind of a Lightsaber sound from Jay?
Yeah.
Okay.
Hard to hear.
I'm going to try moving.
Okay. Yeah, your audio's a little bit odd. And then Mark. Where's Mark?
Hi,
There he is.
my name, can you hear me?
Galaxy 9. Yes, yes. Yours just says Galaxy S9. But this is Mark, everyone.
My name's Mark Kelly. I own my company, Kelly Appraisal Services. I've been appraising since 2004. After the '09 crash, I started my own company. We used to have a group appraisal back in the good old days when you can still assign stuff out. And we had about 5 appraisers in the office. And then after the '09 crash, everybody kind of went solo and did their own thing. Most of them actually are no longer in the business. So I'm kind of happy that I was able to stay in. But I've been working, I primarily do West Valley as well. I've lived all over the Valley. So I do appraise all of Maricopa County, but I pretty much specialize west, north and west, Phoenix, Glendale, Peoria, Buckeye, Litchfield Park, Avondale, that area. Like most people, I have shrunk my business down a little bit. Demand is off the charts right now. And other than that, if I can answer any questions, I'll be happy to help.
Mark, I was really looking forward to your cowboy hat. I have to say, I would have found you immediately. Oh,
There it is.
yes!
I have that one.
Ah, I love it. That's perfect. That's your character, right? Well, awesome, guys. Thank you all so much for being here today. Since we've got, this one's a little bit different because what you deal with is different. The inspectors deal with different things. The appraisers deal with different things. So I do have separate questions for each of you. So, but I'm going to go back and forth because I like it interactive like that. So I'll start out with our inspectors, and I'll ask the question, I'll direct it, but then I'd love answers from both of you. So we're going to start out with Anthony.
Uh-oh.
Yeah, I know. Are you ready?
I
Here we
don't know.
go.
Let's
Tough
do it.
questions. All right, Anthony. Home inspections really can shed some light on the home and its condition. Are you seeing any differences in the conditions of the properties over just the past couple of years?
Yeah, I mean, I would say depending on the type of property you're inspecting, right? I mean, so there's variances in everything. I would say let's kind of dial it back a little bit. I would say over the last couple of months, there's kind of been a little bit of differences, right? So as Mary Ann could probably attest to, you know, our new norm's a little different, and we're navigating different things today, you know, that we weren't 3 months ago, right? So houses are more occupied today than they were, you know, back in January or February, right? So and being able to conduct an inspection in a house where somebody's present or somebody's living in and things like that are quite different. So you know, as you know, the things kind of change and you know, qualifications change and things like that. I think the types of houses that we were doing kind of changed. We took a shift over the last couple months to like the mid-range and high-range homes because a lot of the first-time buyer assistant programs kind of went away, right? So some of those first-time buyer houses and things like that, you know, were kind of put on hold. So the types of houses and things we do have kind of shifted in the last 30, 60, 90.
Okay, Marianne. Anthony said you could attest.
Yeah, definitely. You know, it changes from month to month, year to year. I think kind of based on the market and, you know, based on a lot of things right now, you know, with this COVID-19, definitely we're seeing some changes, not so much in the homes themselves, but how we're having to do our inspections. But I'm doing personally myself, I'm seeing a lot of I'm doing a lot of new construction, warranty inspections, people that have been in the home for a year and they want a warranty inspection before their warranty's up. So those, of course, are, you know, love those homes, brand new homes. But so I'm doing quite a bit of new construction. Also, prior to, I would say maybe early this year, starting in the fall, I was seeing a lot of rental properties that were up for sale. You know, I felt like a lot of investors were selling their rental properties. and you know, some of those can have a lot of deferred maintenance, but like Anthony says, I am seeing more kind of upper end homes. I'm doing more upper end homes, just I think because you know, some of the financing is getting a little bit tougher right now, I think, for some home buyers during this kind of strange area, you know, COVID-19 time we're in. I think lending, you know, I'm not sure, the lenders might be able to attest to that, but that it's changing a little bit, maybe as far as who can get loans.
A little bit, yeah. Yeah, a lot of, I mean, there's the first time home buyer programs are, you know, they're not what they were, but, you know, our market is ever changing. All right, appraisers, are you guys ready? I'm bringing out the big guns right now. And the thing that everybody wants to know, I'm going to start with you, Mark. Are you seeing an impact on the values in Arizona due to COVID-19? There it is. That's what we all want to know.
Knock on wood, not in closed values. So closed values I've noticed are still going up, still appreciating. Now the rate has slowed marginally, but I've noticed more in the actives and the contract pricing. So the appraisal is a shadow industry. Everything we do is 20, 30, 60 days behind us. So the COVID effect should just now be coming into where we can actually see it and register what's going on. I know my purchases haven't slowed in the last 30 to 60 days. My refis have, ironically enough, they've slowed down marginally. The business is still going crazy right now. The transactions are still taking place, but I've noticed the active. So 8 out of 10 appraisals that I've done, my closed values are higher than my actives. So I've had a really hard time showing support for the market because they always ask us, please put 2 in, 1 active, 1 penny. If you can't do that, 2 actives. And I'm having a really hard time justifying hey, my 3 closed come out at 375, but I can't show an active to support that because I think the buyers have pulled off the top end shelf stuff. So now it's only investor market and lower end mid-range stuff going on the market because they're not necessarily desperate to sell, but they don't have the luxury of holding a property and sitting on it because they can't make those mortgage payments if they can't rent it out. They can't, you know, if they've already bought another property, now that's just another mortgage payment that they have to make, and they don't necessarily have it to sit on. They can't make that payment. So I think they're just dumping it in the contract prices. They're at ask, if not below ask right now. I think they're desperate to take buyers. They're just trying to get rid of it because they're afraid if the market does go down, they're going to be left holding the bag.
Yeah. Jay, how about you? What's the impact?
Can you hear me any better?
You sound great.
All right. That's awesome.
Thank you so much.
Good. So I agree with a lot of what Mark said, but I actually want to give your participants some numbers because the numbers are a little bit startling. What I did, and first the other thing I will say is I've been appraising 30 years, and this is about the most difficult time I've ever had as an appraiser because we're dealing with a unique event, and what appraisers should be good at is looking back in time and saying, oh, when that happened last time, this is how the market reacted. There's no last time here. And so for a while, I felt like I was kind of going at it blind saying, all right, well, here's what's COVID's done to our economy. And all these factors have diminished the potential amount of buyers. So it's got to be impactful in some way. I just don't know how. But now I have the luxury of being able to compare March numbers to April numbers to May numbers. And like Mark said, sales are a lagging indicator. So I look at March closings as February contracts. You guys remember how great it was in February? Can we just go back to February? It was so different than now. So March closings in ARMLS, we had almost 8,900 closings. April is, I view, fully impacted by COVID because those are usually March contracts. So that's COVID stuff. The sales dropped to 7,180. So a 19% decline in the number of sales. Another more poignant figure is I ran the average price per foot for March sales versus April. And that dropped from $231 a foot down to $212 a foot. And initially when I saw that, I'm like, oh my gosh, we had an 8% decline in 1 month. I was on a Zoom call with Tina over at the Cromford Report, and she talked me off the ledge a little bit to say, you know what, a lot of that is the luxury market's drying up at a greater rate. And when you lose the luxury market, your price per foot goes down. The last thing I'll say is I ran May up until this morning, and the average price per foot for May sales so far is at about $178 a foot. That's a 23% decline when compared to March 2 months ago. So I do think there's some impact. As an appraiser, it's kind of tough to figure out how best to quantify it. But I will tell you that now when I go into an appraisal, I'm at least a bit predisposed to maybe be a little bit more conservative when I'm using sales from a few months ago.
Nice. Excellent. All right, back to my inspectors. Mary Ann, what are the major concerns that you're hearing from your clients right now?
I would say I'm hearing that they're kind of frustrated how hard it was to find a house, you know, probably because of lower inventory maybe right now. And I've had a couple buyers that have had to cancel inspections because their financing did not go through, or I've heard from after the inspection and they did not get the financing that they had, you know, already maybe had pre-qualified for. So it seems like I said before, that the economy is causing maybe some issues with people getting financing. So that seems to be, you know, other than just low inventory, then maybe it's a little bit harder to find the home that they're looking for.
Anthony, what about you? What are the major concerns?
Yeah, well, I think, you know, it kind of goes back to what I was saying before. It kind of all depends on who's buying, right? Is it a first-time buyer? Is it a mid-level? Is it mid-level property or high-end property? I would say for like the first-time buyers and, you know, the entry-level properties or entry-level homes, I would say the major concerns are the four big ones, right, that we see all the time: foundation, roof, HVAC, and electrical, right? So that being said, you know, if those are tend to be good, as Marianne kind of alluded to, you know, people are struggling to get into houses, so they're kind of willing to overlook some of the minor deficiencies or things like that. So they just want to make sure the core of the structure is good and the core of the home's good. It's safe for their family. You know, as you get into like the mid-level and the higher end houses, things and newer homes as well, I think people tend to get a little bit more pickier. A lot of cosmetic things kind of fall into play at that point, where we're asked to kind of add cosmetic things that normally wouldn't probably make an inspection. But yeah, for the most part, it kind of shuffles around the main four, I would say. Yeah.
Nice. All right, back to my appraisers. All right, Jay, we've heard that appraisers may have been making adjustments for COVID. Give us the facts, man.
So I've seen 3 different approaches from appraisers to dealing with the COVID scenario. One, and I've seen this a few times, a minority of occasions, where an appraiser will just make a flat out adjustment, a COVID adjustment, a Corona adjustment, a time adjustment. I saw a $4,500 adjustment recently. I saw a $10,000 adjustment recently. That's not the approach I take, because I think that you put yourself in jeopardy as an appraiser because it's so tough to quantify with the precise number. And I really don't want to have people focus on this is the exact dollar amount. The second approach I see appraisers using is just not mentioning it. Not mentioning COVID, not mentioning Corona, social distancing, the economic conditions that we're in. I think those appraisers are putting their professional careers in jeopardy, because we're in the middle of the biggest economic event most of us have ever lived through. And to just kind of put your head in the sand and not worry about it is poor form. The approach that I like and that works best for me is when I'm done with my appraisal, it's very rare that I would ever say, well, that house is worth $423,250. Like, that's kind of not how appraising works. We usually think there's a range. And so when I'm done, I might say, hey, this house is worth somewhere between $400,000 and $415,000. And anywhere in there, I normally feel comfortable. Where before COVID, maybe I wouldn't have a problem at $415,000. Now I'm a little closer to the 400 to 410. And I talk about, I'm a little more conservative, and here's why. That works best for me. And I think it's easiest for me to justify and still give a good product to my client.
Nice. Mark, how about you? Justin?
I'm kind of on the same par there. Like he said, generally when you're doing your sales comparison approach and coming up to your valuation on a refinancing in particular, because you don't necessarily have a contract price, you don't have that, you don't know where those numbers are. If you see that range again in February, January, I was way more comfortable going with the higher within that higher range of values. But as he said, because we've been here before, we understand there's something happening. We just don't necessarily know what yet. We don't know how it's affecting the market as of right now, other than, we can kind of guess, sales are going to go down, volume in general is going to kind of go down. There's a intimidation factors going on. So I am also being a little bit more conservative with my valuation. And it's not really a CYA, but it's a, you just trying to be professional, trying to be educated. You want to show the banks that, because there is something, I'm going to kind of arch it down a little bit, I guess was the best way to put it. The contract pricing that I do for purchases, they kind of give you a target. And you're like, all right, is this justified within the market? It's not necessarily I need to hit that number. But is this number justified? I just did one yesterday, as a matter of fact, where it was $25,000 higher than anything that had sold, period. And it wasn't going to get there. I mean, the range was 25 high to maybe 35 high, pretty tight market. If I was going to kill the deal, I'm going to kill it conservative. I'm not going to kill it high, because if I'm going to kill it, at least have numbers to protect yourself and show this is why I think my value is here. And by the way, I don't have any actives that even support that contract price. So therefore, I narrowed it down a little bit. And everything I do in my appraisals right now, I used to put in maybe 5, 6. Now I'm putting in 7, 8, and 9 comparables in every single appraisal I'm doing, just to show, listen, I'm doing my due diligence. Here's the market, here's the numbers, and here's why it's not worth that.
Good, excellent. Yeah. I mean, the more information you have to support, the better. So that's a great tip. All right, back to our inspectors. Anthony, many sellers do not want to do repairs on their homes. I can't imagine why you wouldn't want to put extra money into a home that you're selling. But how are you presenting and coaching the agents and the buyers on the repairs?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. So I think BINSR acceptance kind of fluctuates with the market, right? So as the market changes, so does the willingness to kind of do repairs and fix things. So first of all, I think the agents we work with do a fantastic job at kind of setting the expectation up front with their buyers and kind of informing them of what the process is. As far as we're concerned, we kind of take the same approach. As I mentioned earlier, we have 10 inspectors here in the Valley. I have 38 across 5 different states. And we work really hard on the delivery of the information we're providing. So at the beginning of every review, we start the process with, your job's to kind of fall in love with the house, the home, the kitchen, the area. Our job's really to kind of dig through it and tell you as much about it as we possibly can. And then set the expectation up front that a lot of the items in our report are going to be, do DIY stuff for one, part of home ownership. And then the other things won't be, and we'll kind of discuss that and go over there. So it's all about delivery with our team. I think we do a pretty good job of kind of getting out and around the Valley and doing, lunch and learns and CE classes and things like that, and educating our agents with what the market's doing and what we're seeing. And like I said, I think it's always going to be a fluctuation, and it's just kind of a matter of, everything's fixable. It's just a matter of who's going to pay for it and what's important to the buyer at that point.
Yeah. Mary Ann.
Yeah, I agree with Anthony. The agents I work with do a great job setting the expectations for their clients. As far as the repairs, every single client I work for, buyers are different. Like Anthony said, first-time home buyers, totally different than a seasoned home buyer. So, first-time home buyers may be really overwhelmed when I present a report. And then I kind of have to break it down to minor and major, what I try to tell them, this is a very minor or maintenance issue, to kind of just, help them, relax a little. And I don't try to soften things so much as I just try to give the facts, but, I don't try to scare people to death. I try to break it down so they understand that, if interior door is rubbing at the top door frame, that's not, a major issue and it can be easily fixed. Whereas if it's a 30-year-old home that has the underlayment on the concrete tile roof is, leaking and needs to be replacement, that is a major, cost. And that's something that, I kind of go into more detail with that. A lot of times I will defer to the agent, because the agent, likes to sit down with them and kind of go over, what on the Binzer, what they would like to ask for repairs. Some buyers, they want to put every single thing that's on my report, on the Binzer, and that's just not really realistic. Some agents will let them do that, and I think that's probably not a good thing, because there's just so many minor things and maintenance issues, and I'm sure Anthony knows some things. Just like he said, do it yourself. Repairs. But, some home buyers, they will tell me, I do not know how to, fix anything, so they're very concerned when they find, when it appears to be a very long list of things that need to be repaired or taken care of. And so they want to know who's going to take care of them, who's responsible. Am I responsible? Is the seller responsible? And so I try to just really try to keep it simple for them and just explain, this is a minor repair, this is a major repair. And then I kind of let the agent kind of take it from there as far as what they're going to decide to do with it.
Sarah, real quick, just kind of add on to that. I think common misconception out there is that inspectors aren't allowed to give quotes or things like that. And there is a conflict of interest, and we're not allowed to give quotes of repair as if we were doing it ourselves. But if you're a well-educated inspector, can understand what industry averages are of cost of repairs, and things that we're forced to, I don't want to say forced, but things that we have to put in our reports that are considered safety hazards and things like that, cross connection issues, are pretty minor, cost of repairs are pretty easy fixes. And so, part of doing the review and understanding who your buyer is kind of explaining what those are, right? So, and then I would say to those agents, because I see a lot of names that I don't know. So I would say whether you use us, or another inspection company, it's a good idea to kind of sit down with your inspector and go over expectations. Go over when you're setting the appointment, when you're booking it, when you're telling them when somebody's going to be calling them. Let them know, is it a first-time buyer? Is it a new home? And set the expectation with your inspector, because our delivery definitely changes, as kind of Mary Ann mentioned. Our delivery definitely changes if it's a first-time buyer, or if it's a guy, who flips 8 houses a month, right? So, so yeah, set those expectations with your team.
Yeah, very good. Great advice, Anthony. Back to our appraisers. Mark, how many lenders are waiving appraisals right now?
Good question. I have probably 5 or 6 good friends, lenders, and on average, they're probably getting maybe 2 out of 8 deals right now being waived, and it's not necessarily a COVID thing. It's a time thing that they're trying to say. This appraisal's 2 weeks out, 3 weeks out, and they're trying to use that as an excuse to get around the appraisal to get the waivers. But it's not a high number, at least that they're doing. They do primarily mid to high range stuff. So they tend to deal with the better credit people and the higher earners. And so, maybe 2 out of 8, 2 out of 10 they're actually getting waived. But for the most part, at least that they've expressed to me, not a lot are getting waived that I've seen.
Jay, how about you?
Why do you have to bum me out, Sarah?
The tough questions. We need the real answers.
Yeah. So I was on a call with a bunch of loan officers yesterday, and one of them mentioned 30 to 35% of their loan applications, they're getting appraisal waivers. And I certainly understand that for refinances when they just bought the house a year ago and they've got great credit. I totally understand that. The one thing I want to make the people on this call aware of is if you have a transaction and your borrower gets an appraisal waiver, I think that you owe it to them to talk about what that means. And it's not just, hey, great buyer, you've just saved $450. It's also, you've given up the right to get an independent opinion of value from somebody who probably has more information than you do. And so I'm not saying, in some cases, I think I would sign an appraisal waiver on a purchase. But there's times where we're a value member of the process, and we might end up at the end, if we come in low, we might save your borrower money. So I just think that part of being a well-rounded realtor and giving great advice to your client from start to finish is saying, hey, before we sign that appraisal waiver and give a right to something, maybe an appraisal in this case is worth doing.
Nice. All right, back to our inspectors. Marianne, what are your protocols for doing inspections?
Protocols as in for right now during this COVID-19 or just? Yeah.
During that and in general.
Okay. Well, they have changed a little bit in the last couple months. Fortunately, I'm a single home inspector. Anthony has probably a totally different experience because he has several, a large inspection company that a lot of inspectors he deals with. So myself, it's a little bit easier for me to make the rules and what I want to do, and as far as changes, and I can make them very quickly. For example, last month in April, when Governor Ducey kind of placed the stay-at-home order, I made the decision, because I was still very busy doing home inspections, I made the decision to ask my sellers, who I normally don't care if they're in the house or not in the home. So I asked to do for the homes to be vacant. I wasn't meeting with buyers and agents at the home. We were doing like Zoom reviews afterwards or phone calls. Protocol kind of changed as far as how I normally would meet with buyers and agents. But other than that, everything pretty much has stayed the same. My protocols as far as my inspection and how I do how I try to really stay involved with the buyers and the agents throughout the entire process until the end, until the inspection is completed. And like Anthony said, it's wonderful when the agents can help me set the expectation for their buyer, what their concerns are, what their buyer's concerns are, from start to finish. And so it makes it a little bit easier for us to work with to kind of help their buyers so that we don't alarm them if they have home buyers, especially.
Anthony, how about you guys over at HCP? What kind of protocols are you running right now?
I'm buying a lot more gloves and masks, that's for sure.
That goes without saying.
I think, we try to stay up to date with, the CDC recommendations as far as, what their protocol is. I think, we do a pretty good job. We have weeklies that my team kind of meets and kind of goes over what we're doing that week, because it's a constant change. What we're doing today is probably going to change tomorrow. And so just kind of staying up to date and staying proactive with that. From the buyers and the seller standpoint, I would say the same. We're offering a lot of Zoom reviews or conference reviews. I think at the beginning of April, when nobody really knew, or end of March, beginning of April, when nobody really knew what this kind of looked like and felt like, we were kind of getting a big push to kind of still do the review in person, and people wanted to be there. It was their right to be there. And so, we kind of navigated that. And then as April kind of took its, its toll, I think a lot of people backed off that. So technology is great, and we're able to share screens and kind of go over everything over the phone. So I think that's good. Like I said, we'll see what June brings and kind of go from there.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. My appraisers. This is a good one. What is the biggest difference between add-ons and improvements, Jay?
I don't really know what we're talking about on that, Sarah. I mean, maybe is this unpermitted additions versus permitted additions, maybe?
Yeah, let's go with that.
So we could take it that way. I would say if you are selling a house or buying a house and there's an unpermitted addition, you have a huge variable in the appraisal process because you don't know how the appraiser is going to handle it. There's really 3 scenarios I could see happening if the house the appraiser is appraising has an unpermitted addition. There's appraisers out there that if there's no permits, they're not going to give it value. And justification could be something along the lines of, if the house burns down, the appraiser is trying to create assurances for the lender, and maybe that wouldn't be rebuilt. An unpermitted addition, another appraiser might exclude it from the living area figure, but give it some value, give it less value. That's potentially really impactful, because if it's a 2,000 square foot home with a 500 square foot addition, you want the appraiser to look for 2,500 square foot comps. But in that scenario, they're looking for 2,000 square foot comps and then making an adjustment for the unpermitted addition. The third approach, and I generally adhere to this, if the addition, even if it's unpermitted, is well done, and it meets all the criteria of living area, finished, functional, vented for heating and cooling, doesn't compromise the integrity of the original house, similar construction quality, and it's in a neighborhood, this is kind of important, it's in a neighborhood where it's not the only house with unpermitted additions. If you're in the middle of Paradise Valley with an unpermitted addition, I might struggle to give you value for that, because that's really atypical. Then I'll include it in my square footage and then explain in the addendum to the underwriter who might see the variance between the county and my measurements to say, hey, I understand there's a 500 square foot addition that doesn't appear to be reflected in county records, but here are all the reasons I'm including it in my square footage. So I hope we're answering the question correctly.
Yeah. All information is great information. Mark, how about you? What's your take?
I'll take it a different way, because I agree with what he says about the square footage and the add-ons, permitted, non-permitted, because I do a lot of Maryville Terrace, where it's super common to have, tax records. The house is a 3-bedroom, 1-bath, 1,128 square foot, because that's how it was originally built. And then you get there and you find out, oh, wait a minute, the carport's been enclosed and it's now a mother-in-law casita. It's got a kitchenette built into it with another bath. So that's pretty common in that area. So providing it's built of like quality material in a workmanlike manner. It's ducted and vented. So you have air conditioning and heating to keep you climate controlled. That's common. So we'll give it value, and we'll just put a comment in there. Hey, this may not be permitted by the city, and the city considers this to be unpermitted addition. And in the event that it were to burn down or a disaster were to happen, it would not be allowed to be rebuilt without permits. So we can give it value, but I'll do something else. I'll go, a lot of the times when I ask agents, I'll be like, all right, so what kind of features do we have? What are your upgrades? What are your selling points? And they'll go, oh, we just changed out all the ceiling fans. We just put in wood blinds. So, we did window treatments. We did brand new irrigation system in, front and rear yard. We just had the rear landscape done, brand new lawn put in. And I tell them, I say, yeah, those are all nice features for a home, but they're not necessarily a value. There's no value necessarily to those, because when you walk into a home, all homes are going to have some type of window treatment. So the fact that you changed it from a dark blue, valance to a white valance because you're updating the theme, yeah, the buyer might not like it. It lightens up the room, but it doesn't necessarily have value. You changed from a 1-inch blind to a 3-inch blind. Yeah, it might make it a little bit nicer, look pretty. And yes, it definitely, all those things cost money, but it doesn't add value. It might sell a property faster, but it's not going to raise the value of the property. So those are additions that people do to properties where they think, okay, this is raising my value. And a lot of realtors will even say, yeah, this is going to raise your value. And as an appraiser and as a bank, we look at it and say, well, everybody has blinds. Now, plantation shutters versus blinds, yes, there might be a difference there, but those are add-on, permanently attached. They're not going anywhere. And that's a really high-end dollar amount versus, a $30 investment per window doesn't necessarily add value.
Yeah, those are great. 2 amazing answers, guys. Thank you. All right, back to our inspectors. Anthony, hey, are agents actually showing up for the inspections?
That's a loaded question.
I know.
I would say pre-COVID-19, believe it or not, it was like a 70-30 split, right? So about 30% of agents never came to the review or never came to the inspection. As COVID-19 kind of hit, I would say that number kind of went up to about 90%, right? So, in the peak of what we were kind of going through, agents just chose not to go. And a lot of factors kind of went into that, right? So was the house occupied? Was there more than how many bodies were in the house? And as we're kind of coming down now and stabilizing somewhat, that number's kind of leveled out a little bit. So it's about 50-50 right now. Some agents are still not choosing to kind of, add body space or add body count to especially in those smaller condos and things like that, right? So I think, as this kind of levels out a little bit, those numbers will kind of go back to what they were, what we were seeing beforehand. When everything kind of gets back to normal, I always tell my agents, it's an extra touch for you, right? Like it's an extra opportunity to kind of establish a relationship with your buyer, prove value, provide value. So it's beneficial to you to do it. And also you're hearing firsthand, like what we're discussing and how we're presenting things. And sometimes, they hear things that we're not saying, or they hear things that are probably a little bit more escalated than what we're saying. And it's good for them to be there to kind of offer that levelness. So, we'll see what the numbers do, but I think, I kind of feel like they'll kind of get back to normal. It's 70-30, 80-20, somewhere around there.
Excellent. Marianne?
Yeah,
what were you seeing and what are you seeing and where are we going?
Well, as far as our agents showing up, is that the question?
Yeah.
Okay. And Anthony, I want to ask you, say 70-30, so you're saying 70% of the agents are not showing up and 30% are? Is that?
Pre-COVID? No. Yeah, 70% were showing up, 30%.
Okay. Yeah. Okay, that's what I thought. I wasn't sure. I wanted to clear. Yeah, and I'm probably right in there. I would say mine might even be a little bit higher pre-COVID. I'd probably say almost 90% of my agents always show up. And of course, I'm a much smaller business than Anthony. He has much probably larger numbers than me. And now with the COVID, again, in April, I was basically asking agents, we were just kind of, meeting over the phone or Zoom. So they, of course, weren't showing up. Now back here in June, we're back to, May, we're back to pretty much agents are still showing up. So I'm kind of back to maybe 90% of my agents still showing up. Some of them are there for the entire inspections. So yeah, they are pretty much showing up. They want to be there. They want to protect. I think a lot of times, the agents are very concerned about, making sure that the client, if I'm giving them a review, they're concerned that, if their buyer gets upset, they're there to kind of calm things down and just make sure things go smoothly, which I'm totally fine with. I try, like I said, I try to present my review and the information in a very level manner so that not to, blow things out of proportion. But the agents are it's always great for the agent to be there to answer other questions that, may not be questions directed towards me. So it's just for us to be there as a team is just ideal. And so I'm thankful that I work with just so many great agents that, yeah, they pretty much show up for their clients.
Please. All right, back to our appraisers. And this is going to be my last question. And then I want to touch on the questions that we have in the chat. So I'll leave a few minutes for that. So thank you all who asked. We had amazing questions come in at the very beginning. So thank you all very much for your patience. So last one of my questions for the appraisers: have any of the changes with Fannie and Freddie affected your ability to determine the values without doing an interior inspection? You guys get that? Okay, Jay shook his head yes, and Mark's looking off in a deep thought. So Jay, go for it.
So yeah, what's happening now on occasions is they're changing what normally would be a full appraisal to a drive-by or a desktop, meaning the appraiser is deprived of the interior inspection of the home. And so I actually want to tell you a quick story about a friend of mine who's a realtor. She had a house in escrow in the historic district. The appraiser got an order that just called for a desktop appraisal. So the appraiser never went out and did something wrong, actually incorrect, never called the agent, never did any due diligence, and just completed the appraisal without any input on the condition of the house. Came in $25,000 below the contract price. Got the square footage of the basement wrong, the square footage of the main house wrong, missed the condition, the upgrades, the features. And that was a 3-day ordeal for the agent to get a new appraisal because the original appraiser refused to go do an inspection of the property. So yeah, I think there are definitely times when the lack of an interior inspection by the appraiser could materially impact the conclusion. So I guess I would say it this way. And the other thing I wanted to say is the appraiser, Fannie Mae just came out and said, the appraiser can't make assumptions on the condition. Just because the inspection's been waived doesn't mean that that gives they're exonerated from understanding the condition of the property. So the appraiser is still supposed to make the inquiries. But in that case, the appraiser didn't. So I think for the really diligent agent, they need to let the lender know if the house is nice and upgraded, maybe the square footage is larger than what the county says. The agent really should say, I would like this to be a full appraisal and really push for that. And at minimum, have that opportunity to speak with the appraiser. Otherwise, their deal becomes in jeopardy. Look, if it's your listing and it's the ugliest house in the neighborhood and it hasn't been touched in 30 years, a drive-by appraisal is great for you. But on those situations where we're talking about a highly upgraded house, maybe with some additions, I would work really hard as the agent to say, this is one that really should qualify for a drive-by appraisal.
Mm-hmm. Mark, what do you think?
I would mirror his consent, say yes. The COVID-19 has absolutely affected that. In my personal, I only do maybe 20, 24 a month total. My volume of drive-bys and desktops, I were maybe doing 1 a month. Now I'm probably doing 6 to 8 a month. And I've really noticed a difference. They were all purchases, none of them were refis. But I've noticed a difference in the staging. Right now, properties I've gone into, I haven't seen them staged. And I don't know if that's because there's less foot traffic, so they don't want to stage them. I don't know if they don't want their props to be, contaminated. But the last 2-3 weeks, especially, an agent has even asked to come out and meet me when I do a personal inspection, when I do the drive-bys. It's just that it seems like they're not prettying up the sales. Not that it necessarily affects their value, but it has absolutely affected the way I have been doing my appraisals. And it's harder to have a complete picture of what you're doing and try and come to a valuation when you don't personally inspect the property. Because a lot of it, when you walk through a property, we also get impressions. We are also impressed by fit and finish, trim. Is the paint done, sloppily? Has the paint been trimmed out nicely? Those affect our mental mind image of the property as we're typing them as well. And if you don't get that impression of the property, if you don't walk the property and feel the you know, the carpet and notice, oh, this is Berber carpet and not just you know, some cheap $4 a square yard carpet thrown in, it absolutely affects the value. It's not necessarily a I'm going to pull different comparables, but it may influence the appraiser to not necessarily try and prove, hey, my property is worth this much because of this, and this.
Mhm.
You don't have that inner impression to be able to say, you know, I know this looks high to a bank, but here's why. And then we can extrapolate, you know, all of these features, all of these amenities. You might not know that it's, you know, a 9-foot ceiling instead of an 8-foot ceiling. You might not know that, oh, this one has vaulted ceilings versus this one's flat ceilings. You might not, oh, this has plant ledges, this one doesn't. And it absolutely affects the value because the appraiser isn't necessarily fighting for that buyer.
All right, guys, we're going to go into the chat room questions. There's actually quite a few. So hopefully everybody's okay to even stick around a few more minutes after. So we're going to try and bang these out. These are for the...
Sorry, it's me. Hey, can I just, before you jump into the Q&A, can I kind of just follow up on that last one from the appraisers? Can I ask them real quick?
No, that's totally not allowed.
No, it'll be a good one, I promise.
Of course it is. Of course it is. Go for it.
All right. So, hey, guys, as I make kind of like our monthly tours of these offices, what I hear a lot them asking their loan officers are about leave behind package, right? Like, how do they get you guys the information and best ways to do that? And I know, like, pre-COVID, a lot of agents were kind of leaving packets for you guys on the kitchen table or something like that, right? With, you know, the comps they pulled and how they created value. Post-COVID, like, what's the best way for them to kind of get information to you guys? Do you guys accept, you know, do you guys like that information? What's the best way for them to go about it?
Yeah, Mark, give me a second on that one. So I still think that I like the realtors to be there. I just do. And I would say this, I'm an advocate of that because I think that this is the chance, that meeting at the inspection is the realtor's chance to be proactive and impactful. As opposed to being the realtor that says, hey, it's vacant on lockbox. I'll just yell at you if you come in low. I would rather you be there, meet me. You can actually, there's another thing you can do for me now. You could get there early and turn on the lights and get the sellers with their sneezy coffee kids out of the house for me. Open doors. Like that facilitates for me a more efficient inspection. And just like everybody else is uncomfortable about COVID-related stuff, I kind of am too. And yeah, I'll take the information you give me. I'm happy to go over it with you. I think the best realtors are the ones that are meeting the appraisers there and giving them a package that includes comps, the contract, if there's multiple offers, a list of upgrades, a list of improvements that have been done over the last 5 years. And so I would strongly suggest that if you're not getting an appraiser say, no, I don't want you there, that you use that opportunity to be there and be impactful. Great question, Anthony.
Yeah, it was. All right. So the next question is, again, for the appraisers. The question was, I would like to know how an appraiser adjusts house B and C, but assumes only different in size. So house 1 has 3,400 square feet. House 2 has 3,600 square feet. House 1 is worth $350,000. Is there a formula that you can use to calculate the 200 extra square feet?
Mark, you want that one?
Sure. So that's not really how it's done. So I'll give you a different example that may answer the question. If it doesn't, we can go on. So the subject property, whatever, you know, because from a realtor's point of view, you're trying to value your property. Say you're trying to market it and you want to know where to do it. Typically, as an appraiser, we like to give about 100 square foot range plus or minus. So if you're a 3,500 square foot home, a 36, which is 100 higher, to a 3,400 lower, there isn't really a square footage adjustment usually it's right about 100 square foot. So if you're 200 square foot bigger and or smaller, then the livable area, the GLA difference is going to be calculated, but it's not our first number. You got to take into account your lot size. Pool, does one have a pool, one not have a pool? Bedroom count, does one a 3-bedroom, 2-bath, and the other one's a 5-bedroom, 3.5 bath? Because it's the other factors that may make it not even a comparable. Is it a single-story home versus a 2-story home? Typically, a 2-story home, when marketed, they like to use single-story homes and say, I think my home is worth this, even though they might be within 100 square foot of each other. The typical buyer who wants to buy a single-story home won't even look at a 2-story home because they got bad knees, arthritis, their hips hurt, whatever their reasoning are. So you got to take into account there's a bigger picture than just square footage. You know, the common thing I get when I'm doing a refinance for a neighbor, I'll ask, is there any close properties that you want me to take into consideration? Is there anything well, my neighbor just sold across the street and they sold for $450,000. Therefore, I think my home, I go, well, your neighbor's is a single-story home and you're a 2-story home. Your neighbor's is a 3-bedroom, 2-bath with a pool, built-in spa, fully landscaped to her backyard. And you don't have a pool, you don't have a spa. It's desert landscaping in the rear. So you may not even be comparable. So it's not just the GLA difference. That is a factor, but it's after you take the bigger picture of what is the true difference. When you take the same buyer to go look at this 5-bedroom, 3.5 bath, 2-story home, and then take him to a 3-bedroom, 2-bath ranch style single level home, it's a different beast. They're not the same. The square footage isn't the only thing. So let's go opposite of that. Let's say the square footage is the only difference. Then usually you just want to find out, okay, what's the GLA for this home, this size of a home within, we'll go simple, mile radius. Realtors can do like a mile radius of the subject. We're 2,400 square foot. So let's do this. Let's do 2,200 square foot to 2,600 square foot, single story home. Where's the difference? Where's my average GLA for the last 30 days? And then you can take that number, and if you want to use it, then you can extrapolate from there. Okay, mine's $43 a square foot for the average home within 200 square foot plus or minus of the subject. So therefore, it's $43. That's a method you can use.
Perfect. Yeah, I think we're just focusing on the GLA on that one. All right, the second question, this is once again, I think, for the appraisers. What is the easiest and quickest way we can make a ballpark adjustment for time, it says value, I think maybe value of money in a certain market to determine what rate of growth to use to determine value today compared to 6 months ago?
Okay, so I think what we're talking about is it's the appraiser's tool known as time adjustments. And so basically, one of the huge flaws of appraising is we're using yesterday's information to say what a house is worth today. So we're using historical data and coming up with a value today. That's fine when the market's flat, not always flat. And so when the market's going up like this, and we're using a sale that closed 3 months ago but went under contract 4 months ago, we need to account for the appreciation that's occurred since the meeting of the minds date of that previous comp. And so the way you do it is really analyze market data in the neighborhood we're appraising it. Like I had somebody not too long ago that said, hey, Maricopa County's up 11% over the last year, so let's just make a 1% time adjustment for every month. It doesn't work that way. That's painting with too broad a stroke. We're wanting to know what this market that we're in today, the appraisal I just finished before here was in Arcadia. What's happened in Arcadia over the last 6 months, 12 months, however far we go back. So there's a bunch of different ways you can do it. Appraisers normally use something called a 1004 MC form, but you can just break down data monthly and look at average sales price and average price per square foot and see if you can see a trend. But that's how we do it.
All right. I've got two more. I think we maybe time for two more questions. I don't want to keep everybody too long. But hopefully, y'all would consider coming back maybe 60 to 90 days, and we can kind of touch on a lot of these topics again, because I think things will change in the next 60 to 90 days, because we know they sure did the previous 60 to 90 days. So once again, and a question for the appraisers. Obviously, you guys are the popular ones today. Sorry, Marianne and Anthony. You guys are always popular with me, though. These are some really great questions, though. So the question is, what is your take on reconsideration of values?
All right. Sorry, Mark, I have some thoughts. First of all, you're scaring me. What do you think is going to happen in 60 or 90 days? You think we'll be making murder hornet adjustments or something? I'm nervous that something.
I don't know. Have y'all seen the shark gulls? I'm pretty scared about that.
That's all that stuff scares me. So I am a big believer, as I said earlier, in being proactive instead of reactive. Bring all your artillery to the inspection. Make sure the appraiser knows about it ahead of time. Because here's the reality of things, is the appeal process in a lot of cases is not a fair fight. For an appraiser to change their value, they have to admit they've made a mistake. Does that make sense? I've signed my name to an appraisal. An underwriter's seen my appraisal. Who knows? Who else has seen an appraisal? When I change it, I've conceded to everybody involved that I've made a mistake. I'm a big believer in professional practice, and if I've made a mistake, I own it, I accept it, I explain it, and I move on. But there's a lot of people in our industry that will defend their position as wrong as it could possibly be till the very end. So I don't think it's great appraisal practice to always work from looking back. So I'd rather you be there and give the information up front. If you're going to appeal an appraisal, I definitely think you want to point out everything you think is wrong in the appraisal, not just the ones that are really impactful value-wise, but if you can find 10 mistakes, maybe each of those mistakes might not be super impactful to the value, but in the big picture, it shows a pattern of carelessness. And maybe that carelessness means the conclusion and the appraiser is not so reliable anymore, and that might get you a new appraisal. The appeals that I see that are most successful, an outside appraiser has looked at them first because we can give you an appraiser spin on it, and usually includes better comps. So that's kind of my 2 cents on that.
Excellent. All right. And last question. Let's see. Where did it go in the chat? Here we go. What is the reason for price per square foot on an appraisal?
What's the reason? Well, again, I would have to say it's a matter to justify to the bank how we arrive to a valuation. Again, it's not the first adjustment we do. It's a major one in the sales comparison approach, but because properties aren't all the same, you have to account for differences. So the GLA, also the Radaman method, is generally 1/3 the value of the property divided by the square footage of the property, which is the Radaman method, is one that we commonly use. And it's just a recognized method of appraisal practice to account for those little things that aren't tangible. This one has nicer amenities. This one has more architectural design. This one has, color variants. There's just so many other things that aren't an MLS option. You can't say in MLS, there's no such thing as a condo button in MLS. There's a lot of factors you can't take into account. So therefore, the GLA is the easiest way the appraisers use to account for subtle differences between two similar properties. Swimming pool, easy. Fireplaces, easy. 3-car garages, easy. This one has plantation shutters. This one doesn't. This one has granite countertops. This one doesn't. This one has 42-inch cabinets. This one has 36-inch cabinets. So there's a difference there. And what's that difference? The cost to build the structure was higher for the 42-inch cabinets, for the plantation shutters, all that little, you know, this one has 10 roof lines versus 5 roof lines. The cost to build it was higher, so therefore the cost, the GLA is higher. And that's just one way to take all of that into an account that's, you know, on paper you can show it. It's basically all it is.
Awesome. Well, thank you all so much for being on today. Thank you to our panelists. This was really great information. You know, like I said, the market is changing. The murder hornets might get us. I don't know, Jay. Maybe we'll find out 60 to 90 days from now. If anybody still has any questions, please reach out to our panelists. We'll probably send out an email with the recording and whatnot. Let us know if you would like their contact information, because y'all do an amazing job. And we're so grateful to have you on. Quick shout out and thank you to all of our reps at Landmark. Christy is our fearless leader. And then we've got Beth, Becky, Melinda, Michael, Patty, and Mary. Y'all do an amazing job as well. So if you have any other questions, please reach out to them. And we've got some amazing, I've said amazing a lot, but that's just the way it is.
New word.
We've got some other amazing classes that we're bringing to you. So please participate, and we'll see you on the next one.
Thank you all.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you for having us.